So Luke chapter 14 is where we're going to start. And like I said, Luke chapter 14, Jesus uses the words, my disciple, 3 times. He uses it 6 times total in the New Testament. 3 of those times are right here in Luke chapter 14. And Luke chapter 14 is a tough sermon from Jesus. You've got great crowds following Jesus. So if you look at verse 25, it says the great crowds were accompanying him. And it uses the word accompanied him because they're not truly following Jesus yet. Okay, they're the big crowd. It's kind of like Jesus was kind of like us in this way. Jesus didn't mind having large crowds. He said you can belong before you believe. It's okay to come and see. You don't have to come and follow. You can just kind of come and see and watch and listen. But what Jesus would often do is that when he had large crowds gathered around him, is he would preach a very difficult sermon to kind of thin out the crowd. Now, I'm not trying to thin out the crowd this morning, but I'm just going to repeat the hard sermon from Jesus so that we all know, according to Jesus, what the entry point is to discipleship. He is not marketing. He's not trying to sugarcoat. He's not trying to tickle anybody's ears. He's saying, here's what it means to be a Christian. If you want to be a disciple, you want to follow me, this is what it looks like. There is a cost involved. And so I've titled the message, The Entry Exam. Disciples are radically committed, because in this text you see some radical statements from Jesus about what it means to be a follower. So let's pick it up starting in verse 26. You've got great crowds following Jesus. He turns to them and he preaches a sermon. He says in verse 26, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother, and wife and children, and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Now, isn't that the most challenging thing you've ever heard Jesus say? You want to be my disciple? Here's what it looks like. Number 1, you have to love me more than you love your family. To which immediately, if you're anything like me, you push back and you say, Jesus, my goodness, really? Is that what you really mean? I mean, what about the verses in the New Testament that say that if a man can't provide for his family, that he's worse than an unbeliever? Jesus, I mean, when you were dying on the cross, didn't you tell your friend John, your disciple John, to take care of your mother because you loved your mother? And now you're saying that if I want to be your disciple, that I must hate my mom, I must hate my dad, hate my brother, hate my sister. Is that really what you mean? And in order for you to understand what Jesus means here, you've got to understand that Jesus is using what's called an idiom. It's a Semitic idiom. Semitic means it's Jewish, and so a Jewish idiom. An idiom is a fixed expression with a non-literal meaning. We have all kinds of idioms in English. I would encourage you to get on YouTube and look up the video of that German guy who's trying to understand English idioms. One of the funniest ones is when he talks about being a party pooper. Party pooper? Not appropriate for church, obviously, so we're going to let you look that up later. But it's a fixed expression with a non-literal meaning. Here, I'll give you some PG-rated ones. I went and dug a hole the other day. It was a piece of cake. Really? It was a piece of cake? Digging the hole is a piece of cake? Or, man, I'd give my right arm for that. Really? You would give your right arm? I mean, if you were learning English as a second language, it'd probably drive you nuts. How about this one? Wow, they really woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. Really? How do you know? Were you there? It's an idiom. It's a fixed expression with a non-literal meaning. What we mean is, wow, you're really being crabby today, or I really, really want that. It's and in the Old Testament, when you wanted to talk about loving one person more than another person, the way that you would phrase that in an idiom would be to phrase it in a love-hate relationship. So when Jesus says you must love your father, you must love me more than your father, or when he says you must hate your father and mother, what he means to say is you must love me more than your family. It sounds like being a disciple is joining a gang, but it's not like joining a gang. It's choosing to prioritize in the affections of your heart Jesus above any other human relationship. So let's read the idiom with that in mind. So let's look at verse 26 again. Jesus says, if anyone comes to me, and let's read in, love me more than. If anyone comes to me and does not love me more than his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple.